Hello students, welcome to the business law session for B.B.A 5th semester. In our previous class, we had started about the discussion on the contract of guarantee. We had studied the meaning, we had studied the types of the guarantees, and also we had studied the distinction between indemnity and guarantee. Now, we will move to the next question. That is, the question is define contract of guarantee and state the rights of surety. This is another question from 10 marks point of view from your examination. They will ask you here, define contract of guarantee and state the rights of the surety. So what are the rights that are there to the surety that you have to understand there. So here we have to study here mainly this topic in three parts. The rights of surety against the creditor. So against creditor what rights they have, against the principal debtor and against the co-sureties. So we are going to study this in three parts. Against the creditor, principal debtor and co-sureties. So first here part, as already you know that you have to give the meaning of here the guarantee. What do you mean by the here contract of guarantee? The definition here in your own words, or if you remember you can mainly write the definition itself, or you can put it in a very simple way what you understand by the meaning and give one example there. So that will suffice for the here define contract of guarantee. And what are the rights? These are mainly the rights which are there. So each one we are going to take up. First, rights against the creditor. What are the rights against the creditor here of surety? So first thing you have to answer, when the surety can claim these rights against the creditor, when he has these rights. So when the discharge of the liability, so when the surety discharges the liability, so first there must be a default by the principal debtor. Principal debtor might have here committed the default, so he might be unable to pay the debt, and surety discharges that liability. He discharges of debt, and after that discharging he can mainly claim this mainly the right. These rights is available only after he discharges here the liability which has arisen because of the default of the mainly principal debtor. So that is what you have to write first. Then what are the rights here? Right to claim for securities. Right to claim securities. Now here when the contract of here the guarantee is made, creditor might have taken some securities from the principal debtor, like maybe ornaments here or any valuables. He might have taken here certain securities. Addition to the guarantee, he might have taken certain securities from the principal debtor. And once mainly the surety discharges the liability to the creditor because of the default of the principal debtor, it is the duty of the creditor to hand over the securities to the mainly the surety. He has to hand over whatever securities are available there. Whatever securities are available, he must hand over that to the surety once the liability is discharged. That is here surety gets this right to claim the securities that has been produced by the principal debtor to the creditor. He can claim those securities. Sometimes here the securities here may be lost by the creditor, or without knowing he might have handed over that mainly to the principal debtor without the knowledge of the surety. So, or he has lost the securities. So, in that circumstances, he can mainly surety can claim here the here in the liability what is going to discharge, here the price of that securities can be reduced in the discharge of the liability. So here whatever may be the price of that securities, here will be reduced in discharging the liability there. For example, here A has taken a debt from B and C is the surety. So the debt is of 1 lakh. 1 lakh debt is there for which C has assured the creditor. And in addition to this, here A has given his gold ornaments worth here 25,000. So worth 25,000 as a security he has given to B. The default is there by the principal debtor. C discharges it. C discharges it. But the creditor, here it is his bounden duty to give that ornaments to the guarantor. But he has lost those ornaments. So while discharging this liability of 1 lakh, here the mainly surety can claim here the reduction of 25,000. He can say that 25,000 securities were there with you, you have lost them. So I am reducing the liability and handing over the remaining amount. So that is here in case if the securities are lost. So right to claim securities, this is against a creditor. What is one right available for the guarantor? Second one is right to claim set off. Right to claim set off means in case earlier to this contract of debt, if there is any here transaction that has taken between the principal debtor and the creditor, where principal debtor has advanced a certain money to the creditor before the contract of debt. For example, this is the contract of debt that is there. A has taken 1 lakh rupees from B and C is the guarantor. Just remember this. But before this, here A had given here 25,000 to here B, yet which has to be returned back to here mainly A. B has to return that 25,000. So in this case, here in the mainly the 1 lakh, the debt is there and the default has taken place and the creditor asks the surety to dispose of. So in that case, again he can claim that 25,000 set off, which was due from the principal debtor to the creditor, here the creditor. So but this is not connected to this transaction, but earlier here that money had been given in advance. So that is called as a set off. He can claim the set off while here paying or discharging the liability which has arisen there. So the two things which are there, right to claim the securities, if they are lost, to that extent the liability will be reduced. In place of there is any here claim by the principal debtor against the creditor, here to that extent the mainly the set off can be claimed. So these are the two here the rights available against the creditor to the surety there. This is here the mainly first part. Second part, the rights against the principal debtor. Against the principal debtor, what are the rights? So the first one is right of subrogation. Right of subrogation. So again these rights here arise only after the surety discharges the liability. He has to discharge the liability, then only these rights will be there. Right of subrogation means here mainly interchange, the change in the status. Subrogation is the change in the status, right of subrogation. So what is that? After the surety discharges the liability, he will be stepping into the shoes of the creditor. That is a change of the status. So from surety he becomes the creditor to principal debtor now. So that here he steps into the shoes of the creditor. He gets his status subrogated. So that is from here after discharging of the liability to the creditor, the guarantor steps into the shoes of subrogation, and whatever rights the creditor had against the principal debtors, all those rights will come to here the surety there, because now he is in the status of the creditor there. So that is what here he is subrogated there. That is against the principal debtor, whatever rights were there here against the mainly the principal debtor by the creditor, he gets all those rights. All those rights are available here to the guarantor once he discharges the liability and his status is subrogated. That is here the right of subrogation. And a right to claim indemnification, that is once he has discharged the liability, here he can claim the indemnification there. Indemnification can be claimed there. Indemnification means reimbursement. So against the principal debtor, once the surety has discharged the liability to the creditor, here whatever amount he has paid, he can get it indemnified or reimbursed from the principal debtor. He can claim the indemnification there. Reimbursement from the principal debtor. The two rights for against the principal debtor. And the last one is, if there are co-sureties, I have given you this earlier. What are co-sureties? Co-sureties are where there are more than one surety. They are called as co-sureties. So if there is only one surety, we call him as a surety. If there are more than one, we call it as a co-sureties. Now, here, what are the rights against the co-surety of a surety? Now, for example, before this we go, what is the extent of the liability of the surety? You have to know that. You have to know what is the extent of the liability of the surety there. For instance, here it is the law says that to what extent the principal debtor is liable, to that extent the surety is liable. He is liable. He is not more than that, he is not liable. But the surety can reduce his liability. He can reduce his liability. For example, here, this same example you take, A, here is the principal debtor, he has taken 1 lakh rupees from B and C is the surety. The surety, while giving the surety, he has restricted his the limit only to 25,000. In case there is a default by the principal debtor, B, creditor can claim only 25,000 from the surety. He cannot claim more because he has limited it. If it is not any, the limitation is not there, to that extent what the surety will be liable. The principal debtor will be liable, surety will be liable. To that extent, he will be liable. But in this case, he has limited and it will be only 25,000. Not more than that. So remember this, the surety's liability is coextensive to that of the principal debtor. It cannot be more, it can be less. It can be less. So this thing arises in the co-sureties. So co-sureties are there. Surety is there and co-sureties. So there is more than one surety. For example, X has borrowed from Y, here 1 lakh of rupees, and Z, M, N are 3 sureties. Z, M, N are 3 sureties to this transaction. Now, while giving the co-surety, here maybe nothing limit is there, and the default has been committed by the principal debtor. Now, Y can claim here from the co-sureties there. So what will be their contribution? So they will be 1 lakh will be divided by 3 and whatever it comes here the contribution. So creditor can ask one surety to discharge. He can ask one surety to discharge the whole amount. That right is there to the creditor. He can ask one surety, only Y, Z to discharge it. So when this comes, Z at that time he can claim the contribution. So his contribution, whatever will be there, along with that MN contribution, totally that 1 lakh default is there. So if nothing limit is there. Now if they have limited their liability, it will be not more than that. For example, this is 1 lakh. Now A has given the limit to 50,000. A has given the limit to 50,000. And here M has given the limit to 30,000 and N has given to 20,000. So like this, co-sureties have given their limit. Now suppose the default is 60,000. What will be the contribution of each? The contribution will be here 20, 20, 20. 20, 20, 20. The limit may be anything that is given, but equal contribution will be there. So 60,000 default is there. Now 70,000 default is there. So in this circumstances, he will be paying, N will be paying 20. N will be paying, his limit is mainly here what we have seen is 30,000. So he will be paying 20. This one is 70. It is 70. Now this fellow will be here maybe N will be paying 25. And what will we have? 25 from Z. It will be not more, it will be less. Now suppose this person also cannot here put here, why it cannot be divided, because it will be more for him. It cannot cross 20. Now suppose take 70 divided by 3, if it comes, his contribution will be more. Because he has limited it to 20, it cannot cross 20. So he will be paying 20 and the rest of them will be shared here 25, 25. So like this the contribution, the right of contribution, whatever is there here, if one surety discharges, suppose Z has discharged, immediately he can claim the contribution from M and N. So that right is there here mainly against the co-surety is there. So these are the rights which are there available to the surety only after discharging the liability. These rights accrue in surety only when he discharges the liability which has come to the principal debtor. Because of the principal debtor's default, he discharges the liability to the creditor. This is what we have got, mainly the core here, mainly the surety's rights. So he should first discharge the liability to the creditor, then all these rights will be available to him. So in the conclusion you have to mention this. So the surety here gets all these rights when he discharges the liability which has arisen here because of the default of the principal debtor, and the surety has discharged it to the creditor. These rights will be there against the creditor, principal debtor and the co-sureties if they are there. This is how you have to give the conclusion to this answer. So remember this here, this is one of the important questions from your examination point of view. You may get this for here 10 marks question. In the same way, there is another question which will be for 5 marks, which I will be discussing in the next class, that is the remedies, mainly the modes of discharge of the surety. How the surety gets discharged from his responsibility. The circumstances or the modes we are going to discuss in the next class. We will continue.